Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. The United States celebrated what it called a huge success in the attack against some Iranian nuclear facilities, like did Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu was celebrating these attacks, and as a matter of fact, in Israel, they're now saying that we're almost done and almost accomplished all of the mission in Iran, with the reports coming from Israel that if the supreme leader of Iran decides to end this now, we're happy to get to a ceasefire tomorrow. Benjamin Netanyahu saying that now we have made a very significant progress and we might end this very soon because we don't want to get into a war of attrition. Benjamin Netanyahu is showing clear signs of worry from the prospect of this reaching to a war of attrition where Iran would undoubtedly have the upper hand. However, not everyone is agreeing that the United States carried out this huge attack. And as a matter of fact, we've been speaking about it since the actual attack took place, with Donald Trump's statement looking more like theatrics and a show rather than anything substantial. However, now more evidence is coming up, and there are satellite images. For example, we had these images being published by Maxar of the damage in Fordo in particular. These were images of Fordo before. Then they had images of the place recently. You can see these are the openings here. And this is where the United States carried out the targets. You can see 3 big holes, could be indicating that only 3 missiles on each side landed. However, could be a case of the United States landing potentially more in the same location. That's very, very different from what Donald Trump stated about completely destroying the thing. I mean, for years, people have been speaking, and I have been speaking about the fact that they can't touch Iran's nuclear program because of how they've actually built it into a mountain. It's very heavily fortified, and there were lots of people who showed skepticism about the capability of the United States to have danger or a lot of harm, cause a lot of harm to the Iranian nuclear program. So that's very far from what Donald Trump is saying. As a matter of fact, mainstream media, even in the United States, is talking about the fact that there wasn't actually that much damage, and it's far from what Donald Trump is telling us. 3 holes in this area, 3 holes in that other area too. Which means that, and again, look at this area, for example, still perfectly fine, and it hasn't been touched. The United States told Iran that they were about to carry attack 2 days before. And they told also the Iranians that we're looking to overthrow a government. Clearly a case of show, and Benjamin Netanyahu wanted this, therefore Donald Trump gave him what he wanted. Now, saying all of that, and despite the fact that it's nothing significant here, that doesn't mean that the Iranians are going to take this lightly or have taken this lightly. As a matter of fact, there were multiple confirmations from senior figures in Iran, from the president moving forward, that the enrichment is going to continue. They're going to rebuild everything that has been damaged. The damage wasn't that severe, and that Iran is going to continue its program despite all of this. Now, some of the things that were published in Israel were very interesting today, because Benjamin Netanyahu, he had this statement hailing this as a massive success initially, but there were multiple articles and reports in the Israeli mainstream media casting doubt. For example, this article here in the Israeli Wine, it told, despite the flapping of history's wings, a white flag will probably not arrive. People are clearly aware that Iran will not raise the white flag, and Iran will not surrender. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu also made some statements. Benjamin Netanyahu today said that Iran war will end only when Israel achieves its goals. Prime Minister rules out premature ceasefire, vows to continue military campaign until nuclear and missile threats are neutralized. Hamas is defeated and all the hostages are returned. That's also, he's involving Gaza here too. We are very close to completing our objectives, though, Benjamin Netanyahu said. In the full statement, in one of the longer statements that he made, he also said that, well, we are also opening options with what we're doing in Iran, but we're definitely not going to allow this war to become a war of attrition, because from an Israeli perspective, this is very problematic, because they know very well that they can't go to a war of attrition. Benjamin Netanyahu is still trying to show some strength here. However, he's failing, because apart from his statements that are saying that we're close to kind of getting there, there are other reports in Israel about what's actually happening, what they're really thinking. For example, this report here: if Khamenei stops the fire, we will accept that. Israel is signaling readiness to end the war with Iran. Now, why are they saying that they're ready to end the war with Iran now? Is it because of their strength? What is it exactly? Israel, if they have the upper hand and if they have an advantage, they will never go to a ceasefire. Nothing would stop them from continuing their barbarism, like what they've done with Gaza. But when they are dealing with Iran, Iran is clearly having capabilities to strike Israel. It's more difficult for them. Now, in relation to Iran and the continuation of the enrichment, what are they saying exactly, and where do they stand? There were a couple of statements today coming from the Foreign Minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, and also the Iranian President, Masoud Pezeshkian. The Iranian president, he said that the United States will be punished for what it conducted. That's number one. So coming from the president of Iran, it's a very important statement. How, where, when, all of these things would depend on Iran and its interest, whether they want to have a very aggressive attack against US forces, risking further escalation, or would they want something just symbolic against the United States to punish them for what they've done, but then continue on Israel, because they know that that would be the most effective thing to do, and that's how they can hurt Israel the most, by not trying to engage in a greater war with the United States. But they would need to do something with the United States, because the United States conducted a huge crime inside of Iran, in a very big act of terror inside of Iran. Now, they spoke about continuing to enrich uranium. The Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, he made a very interesting statement, because people were talking about diplomacy and, you know, are you going to continue and what have you. And he actually made a very interesting statement that I wanted to share with you. Let's listen to the Iranian Foreign Minister and what he had to say in this video here.
Well, I think it is irrelevant to ask Iran to return to diplomacy, because we were in the middle of diplomacy. We were in the middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blew it up. And again, we were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans, happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up. So we were in diplomacy, but we were attacked. Well, I think it is irrelevant.
So quite a very straightforward answer coming from the Iranian foreign minister. They were already talking. As a matter of fact, they were talking out of a gesture of goodwill, to be fair, because they were talking with the same man who went out unilaterally of the previous agreement that they had with Iran. Donald Trump completely ripped to shreds the agreement that Barack Obama reached with Iran at the time after a very prolonged effort. But now it's not just about the fact that there is no diplomacy. We are talking about a state of war, and we're talking about a very dangerous phase of that war. Iran's biggest nuclear facilities attacked. Whether or not they were severely damaged, that's a separate story, but they were attacked. So that's a huge crime, and that is a huge act of terror against a sovereign state. The most dangerous statement that came in relation to the nuclear program of Iran and continuing to enrich uranium, apart from the confirmations that came from Iranians themselves, of course, came from the deputy head of the National Security Council in Russia, which is a very important position, second to Shoigu, who is the most senior figure in the security establishment in Russia. And he was also, this man, the previous prime minister of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev. Dmitry Medvedev made a couple of posts. He had a couple of posts on social media. And he said this today in one of his posts. The enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. Now, analysts and observers have already known that Iran, number one, could obtain nuclear weapons if it so wishes. Another prospect is, well, Iran could actually have nuclear weapons for that moment that they feel like they need nuclear weapons. But now, such a senior position in the Russian establishment saying this outright is giving a support, is giving a backing for a de facto nuclear Iran. This is something very important, because this goes against all of the attempts that the United States and Israel are trying to enforce on Iran. They're trying to make Iran not to have a nuclear program that was declared to be for civil purposes. But now you have the Russian establishment, who are very close, of course, to Iran, telling you the future production of nuclear weapons. And by the way, if they need a nuclear bomb, they can get it. Now you might think, okay, well, who can give them a nuclear bomb? And the answer is, well, many countries can give Iran nuclear bombs. North Korea can give them nuclear bombs. Pakistan can give them nuclear bombs. China can give them nuclear bombs. And also, Russia itself can give them nuclear bombs. And there were reports from last year already that Russia made available some nuclear bombs or nuclear warheads to Iran in case things escalate further and they have to advance and take it to that level. These are very, very important developments here, where Iran is clearly understanding that it's in a very strong position. They're not backing down. They are calculating everything in a very strategic manner, and they are continuing with their attacks on Israel. As a matter of fact, just hours after the US act of terrorism inside of Iran, Iran conducted one of the most effective blows and actions against Israel. Today, and we spoke about this earlier on, they carried out multiple attacks on Israel. The Iranians reported that they targeted, or that their strikes included, the Ben Gurion airport, the Israeli regime's biological research center, and logistics bases alongside various bureaus of its command and control centers. And in many of these cases, they are embedded in civilian areas. Again, Israel, everything that they used to blame the Palestinians of doing, every you know, every time they try and blame them, it's a confession to what they actually do. Every accusation is a confession. And people in Israel are posting on social media, why did we not know that there is this place in this area? However, Iran is, of course, targeting them because they're legitimate targets. So a very effective attack Iran carried out today, and the damage was very, very heavy. There were more videos being published about the scale of the damage that came following the Iranian attack, and this video here was one of them, showing you exactly how much damage has been done. And that was only from one missile, by the way. So Iran targeted Israel with several missiles, but this area was only one missile that Iran launched on Israel. So clearly, they didn't want to give Israel a lot of time to be happy and get this kick out of this attack that came from the United States. Now, the United States themselves, clearly there are some people in the administration who appear to be confused. Firstly, all of their faces were confused and like baffled in a way, reluctant. J.D. Vance today is saying, we're not at war with Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program. Interesting. You don't have a war with a country, but you can have a war with part of the thing that the country is doing. But hey, come on. I mean, the United States at the end of the day is the same country that made up the war on terror. You know, for the first time in history, we had a war on a term open for so many interpretations, as a matter of fact, endless interpretations, and a term that gives a blank check for the military-industrial complex. Hello, tomorrow I'll consider everything to be terror, and then I'll declare war. So from J.D. Vance's perspective, we're not at war with Iran, we're at war with Iran's nuclear program. Very interesting. Now, some people are having more harsh tones, like Marco Rubio, a stauncher Zionist, you know, in the administration, saying if Iran responds to our attack, there will be severe consequences. Boo-hoo. I mean, you think they're afraid. But there are some moves that are being conducted now by Iran. And these moves include tensions in the HURMUZ Strait. How did this begin? It began by the Iranian Council, one of the main councils in Iran, legislative, saying that we advise the country to close the Strait of Hormuz. Then there were certain moves. In the beginning, it was just an advisory thing. And in particular, the Iranian Shura Council, by the way, they recommended that the Hormuz Strait should be closed, and they left the decision to the Iranian National Security Council. And this came after senior Iranian lawmakers raised the possibility of withdrawing from the nuclear non-proliferation treaty as well, and the strategic and closing the strategic Hormuz Strait today as options of retaliation against the US and the attack on the Iranian nuclear sites. Then we started to have certain moves. Now, these moves came after tanks started returning, or reports are saying that Iran has started returning tankers to the Strait of Hormuz, with more reports saying that people need to expect prices to start rising. These were some of the images that are coming here. Iran previously forced a British ship that was looking to get in to turn back. But now we're talking about tankers. This means that Iran is already warning that certain actions can be made to cause Well, to apply pressure, because at the end of the day, you know, the United States doing all of this against Iran, Israel too being allowed and enabled, and the European countries that were speaking with Iran, calling Iran itself to de-escalate rather than actually applying pressure on Israel to stop its aggression. But we cannot conclude from this move of Iran that this is going to be the main strategy they're going to do, and they're going to all of a sudden stop everything. Some people are saying, how can they do that even when they have like deals with China or what have you? Well, it's because they're going to keep the Strait open for their business with China, but closed for business when it comes to America and its allies, to apply pressure on them. The likelihood is that Iran will continue to conduct attacks against Israel. Today, there was a statement from the head of the Iranian army who said that Israel is going to regret it. And there was another statement that came from the head of the IRGC, the IRGC chief, who said that there will be no let-up in attacks on Israel. In this report here in one of the Iranian media outlets, there is no pause in the retaliatory strikes the Islamic Revolution Guards Corps is conducting against the Zionist regime, Major General Muhammad Pakpour said. In a meeting with IRGC commanders on Sunday, Major General Pakpour said, "We are at a critical juncture." They're realizing that we're in a sensitive situation at the moment. He stated that the IRGC Aerospace Force units are conducting operations against the Israeli regime uninterruptedly, noting that the attacks have disrupted calm among the Zionists, to say the least. And indeed, they are penetrating the multi-layered air defense systems of Israel. The commander also lauded the growing solidarity among the Iranian people following the Israeli aggression. So clearly, we're not talking about anything that's looking to de-escalate between the two. The biggest question that we are facing now, after verifying that this attack that came from the United States, aside from it being a crime and an act of terror, was more theatrics than actual substantial attack intended to seriously harm the capabilities of Iran's uranium enrichment. Another thing is, well, they told the Iranians that they were about to attack 2 days before, as confirmed by a CBS report, and they reassured the Iranians that we're not looking to take down your establishment. It wasn't an act to take down the capabilities of Iran. Now we're seeing a race. There is a very high likelihood that Iran will come back with full force. They removed all of the uranium from that area because they were preparing anyway. Some reports from Iran said they removed it way back because they were prepared to be attacked by Israel or the United States, or an attack from both of them. However, the big question is now, or lies in, how will Iran attack to the United States? How will they respond to the United States attack against Fordo? Will it be something big, or will it be something small? Chances are Iran would potentially do something symbolic, not necessarily something that will break all of the tools and make it reach an all-out war. And clearly, judging by the initial response, Iran carried out an initial response against Israel, and they carried out a very intense attack on Israel, one of the most serious attacks, with a missile that they used for the first time today, the Khaybar Shikan, uninterrupted. No sirens heard. Israel could not intercept anything. It landed and it did the damage. If we were to judge by this 20th operation coming from Iran during True Promise, in the 9th day of True Promise, if they will continue to do that, we would understand that Iran would still prioritize attacking Israel rather than escalate with the United States, because it doesn't look like Iran is interested in escalating with the United States. However, we clearly heard statements from them that they will be conducting a response that the United States needs to have. At the end of the day, the United States conducted an attack against Iran, whether they told them or not, whether it was effective or not. They had an attack against Iran, and they need to be punished for it, but not to a level where it will attract an all-out war. Because the United States knows the end game of it. There will be a participation both from Russia and from China, and the United States doesn't have the capacity. All they can do is more attacks with the Air Force, and again, with the heaviest bombs that they have, they're very limited on them, whether it's the GBU 57 or any other bunker buster bombs that the United States has. So very, very tense situation. It is a critical junction, indeed, like the IRGC chief said, and a lot of it would go down to how Iran would respond. Then what would the United States do and what Israel would do? Netanyahu is already showing signs that he's willing to reach an agreement. Clearly, Benjamin Netanyahu understood very well that he cannot sustain this. He understands the risks of having a long-term war with Iran that will be a war of attrition. He knows very well that Israel would not be able to sustain itself, hold itself with such a long-term war, and Iran would have the upper hand. And the reports that are coming from Israel that if the supreme leader of Iran wants a ceasefire tomorrow, then we will go for it and we will give him a ceasefire. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. As usual, thank you so much again for tuning in, and I will hopefully see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.